Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With us today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you.
How are you this morning, Dr. Paul?
Doing well,
Good.
ready and raring to go.
That's right.
And I hope we have a little bit of good news at least. It's easy to find a lot of the bad news, but we might have a tidbit somewhere in there. Well, I think we're going to start off with one that if you pay attention, if the people pay attention, this is a bit of good news.
Big, yeah, big.
This is an article Jeff Tucker put up in the AIER report, and he points out, and he defends himself pretty well, that this whole thing about don't touch a surface it was a myth. And also the fumigation and all this nonsense probably was totally unnecessary. And I was just mentioning to you, I wonder how many people suffer some complications from overdoing the spraying and everything.
Yeah.
But the one thing is that the people who sold those sanitizers, and they were used in the hospital all the time. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's wrong when you turn people into zombies and they can't go or can't touch anybody. I wonder if there are a lot of, pick up a baby anymore. And of course, you even went through the experience that under normal circumstances, you could have been with your father,
Exactly.
a little bit longer. But anyway, it's all hysteria. And I think that the people that can't adjust to this are in big trouble. But Jeff points out that it's always a myth.
Yeah.
It was totally unnecessary, and you can't culture viruses off these surfaces. It's here. They're just not there.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, if there are some type of infectious agents around there, when I was raised, you've seen a couple of pictures down in the 30s and in the 40s during the war. We didn't live in great sanitation, but you played outdoors and you were exposed to everything, and we had all the childhood diseases, and we probably had a healthy immune system. But we had, back then there wasn't the measles vaccines or anything else, but we had the smallpox vaccine and not much else. But now there's so much hysteria, and all I keep thinking about is the way people act. It's sort of like the Howard Hughes syndrome. And he died in miserable death in filth and bacteria. And yet he was fanatical about this. And it's hard to say that the whole society is like that, but it reminds me of the irrationality of what so many people go on. And you can't make fun of it. You try to develop a system where you understand it, because there are sometimes you ought to be cautious and take care of it, and there are some responsibilities, but people can figure this out and parents can figure it out. But if you have Dr. Fauci setting all the rules, it gets way out of control. And I remember when this stuff first started, and this to me was funny because I wasn't too savvy. Very early on, and I had a tree to get cut down on my place. So the tree man came, and he got out, and I've known him and all, and he came up, and we'd always say hello and shake hands. He came up, and then he said this. I said, "What's he doing?"
What's wrong with him?
And I had to bump his elbow. No, I don't think I did. I probably didn't do it. So that whole thing just got carried away, and just think of all the activity. But what about if it comes out that the COVID virus was only 10% dangerous compared to what they have claimed? And it is definitely reduced, but nobody knows exactly, much. But once again, people are going to say, boy, did we overdo it. We couldn't go out to a restaurant for over years. They'll be telling these stories to their grandkids. Hopefully they're just stories and still not making and practicing some of the stuff that we started.
Yeah, and Jeff does a good job, because he points out that this is the CDC itself. It's not Jeff Tucker saying, hey, I don't think you can get it from the surface. This is the CDC. And they had, and you have to go to the web archive now to find it, they had a huge page of instructions on how to sanitize surfaces and how to decontaminate surfaces, and you got to spray everything down. Well, they kind of took that down, and as Jeff points out in his piece, on April 5th, they linked to something else. They linked to a new study. Something changed. The CDC changed its guidelines. And then here's a picture of Jeff's article, just so you can see what we're talking about, and you can find it on the website of American Institute for Economic Research. You can see them blasting all this stuff. God knows what they were blasting in here. But the CDC itself said now on April 5th, quote, in most situations, the risk of infection from touching a surface is low. They went on to say, generally, it's less than 1 in 10,000, meaning that each time you contacted a surface that was contaminated, not just any surface, but a contaminated surface, you only have 1 in a 10,000 chance of actually getting infected yourself. So it's not only low, it's astronomically low. They've admitted it now, and actually, we only cite approved sources, Dr. Paul. Let's look, here's something that Jeff wrote in his piece. Fortunately, the New York Times did some accurate reporting on the CDC update, quoting all kinds of experts who claim to have known this all along. And here's a quote from the New York Times. Finally, said Lindsay Marr, an expert on airborne viruses at Virginia Tech, we've known this for a long time, and yet people are still focusing so much on surface cleaning, she added. Here's the money quote, Dr. Paul. There's really no evidence that anyone has ever gotten COVID-19 by touching a contaminated surface. Never.
But you still see ads on TV.
Oh, yeah.
They're selling all the sprays and everything else.
Yeah.
And I was thinking as you were talking, so often my thoughts go back to economics, and a few dollars have been spent.
Oh, yeah.
Millions, billions, and then we appropriate trillions of dollars all out of this fear, and it's a malinvestment. That money, ordinarily, if there was a danger of some spreading disease that individuals, patients and families and local doctors could take care of it, they would have had more money to take care of it this way. But would they appropriate 1,000, 2,000, 3,000? But it never went to really doing what it's supposed to do. What it did, it enforced bad laws.
Yeah.
It made the problems that much worse. But it's also was used in a sinister manner. The people who don't want any emergency go to waste.
Yeah.
Well, this is an emergency.
Right.
You can just see them, their eyes lighting up, and how are we going to use this? And they're pretty successful. They've ended up with a bigger government, more control. The bureaucrats are powerful, and just think how many local political individuals have joined in regulating and writing rules. They sort of enjoy the executive order thing going down. We just write a law and that's it. And yet I think there's a little pushback from that. I think that's getting bad, and maybe the states will wake up to this. But it's a big deal outside of what we hear about, and to me is the bad approach. And without making fun of the seriousness of it, there's a lot of serious problems. But we still have a lot of serious illnesses. But we don't have to close down the world to do it, because then the lockdown can be worse than the disease.
Yeah,
I think that's what happened.
As we're finding out. Well, the thing about this, and I think you suggested it earlier, and I think that might be one of the things. Money, money, money. Hey, you want some money? Face masks, tests, and now billions spent on these disinfectants, sanitizers. Again, we may find, in a few years, there's going to be a rash of cancers from people putting these chemicals constantly on their hands. But remember, going to the store, they had to spray down the cart before you grabbed it. Billions spent on sanitizers to clean the table and sanitize it completely between customers. Closing down the playgrounds. Remember last March, our homeschool group here had a little action where they ripped down the tape closing the playgrounds, spraying down the subways, et cetera, et cetera. And remember, and Jeff points this out, touchless. Everything became touchless. And that almost sounds like a psyop, doesn't it? This idea that if you had dared touch anyone or touch anything, and even Fauci said, we'll never shake hands again. Well, guess what? Again, something Fauci said has turned out to be completely bogus. But it's weird, because if you think of your fellow human being as someone who, if you dare touch them, they may kill you, it does something strange to your psychology, I think.
Boy, there's no doubt about it, and it's just opposite of what we do naturally.
Yeah,
most people, up until a year or so ago, there were a lot of people who would give hugs. Sometimes Sometimes some people overdo it,
Yeah.
but no, but it wasn't offensive. It was usually out of sincere recognition of the value of the other person. But now, if you do it accidentally, you're
No.
supposed to feel guilty,
Oh, yeah.
and somebody's going to say something
Yeah.
to you. Oh no, put their hands up. We don't want to do it. It's sort of working the opposite of what human action is like, which is natural,
Yeah.
and that is human beings want to associate and work with people.
Yeah.
So.
And yes, exactly. And think of some cultures like the Italians, who kiss on each cheek when they meet. And there's something to that. When you destroy all of that, you take away something. And I think Jeff Tucker says at the end, you'll still go to Walmart and you'll still see them spraying down, even though they've changed the guidelines, because it's going to take a long time for people to get out of this cult.
Yep, it's a habit now. It
Yeah.
didn't take them long to do it. Dependency, that's the biggest problem.
Yeah.
I want to move on
Yeah.
to another subject or another point. And this was in the news over the weekend. It had to do with St. Vincent Island.
Yeah.
They had a big volcano.
Volcano, yeah.
And a lot of smoke and dust and danger to health people, and it'd be best to get out of there if you can. But a lot of people were trapped. I guess they were waiting. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad, and they still don't know what's going to happen. It could get much worse. So people do want to get out. So there was a ship, commercial ship, come in and pick up people. But can you believe what they're doing? You had to have a passport. You had to have a vaccinated passport, proving that you've had the shot.
Yeah.
At the same time, people were showing, well, a lot of the stuff they've been putting out isn't even true.
Yeah.
So they had to sort it out. So only the people that had a vaccination are to get on that ship. The other ones, you stay there and just suffer the consequences. Yeah. So let's say their science is not perfect. What they're doing is they're playing God. They say, well, you die. And, because if you're right here, the odds are so much greater than getting COVID or anything else. And that has caught a lot of attention. But people just, I got to get on. I got to get out of here. Maybe somebody else will come along with another ship.
Yeah, it is very disturbing because, and this is in the article, we saw it on Zero Hedge, but they quote CBS Evening News. Cruise ships are now evacuating people from the island, but only those vaccinated against COVID-19. So they can say technically, well, the vaccine isn't mandatory, of course. It's up to you. But look at that lava.
If you want to live,
here
something.
Comes the lava. Here, take a jab. So I think we're going to see more of this unless there's some more pushback, unless people are more outraged.
I have a memory of a similar story like this. It's not exactly, but it reminded me of the story. When I was a kid, I probably saw more movies than I do now. But this movie was during World War II. And the American people were on an island, probably the South Sea Islands, and they were sort of trapped. And they were about to be, there were Japanese around them, and they were very concerned about this. And an airplane came, and they had to sort out who's going to get to do it. So I can remember the commander saying, anybody who can walk and get on that plane can get on. And it was a hospital area for it.
Oh, yeah.
So they had a lot of people in bed and crutches and all these things. And you see the story is the healthy people got on the plane, and the other ones that stayed there, they were going to suffer through it. The irony in the conclusion of the story was, about a period of time afterwards, they heard the plane went down, they all died.
Oh, wow.
And all the people who were forced to stay behind survived.
Huh.
I don't know whether there's a message in there or not. Sometimes you can't predict the future, but it was a movie that sort of stuck with me because I was really emotional about it.
Yeah.
And I told you, I thought so many of those movies back then was mainly to glorify war. But I think the war pictures that I saw during World War II, I had the opposite effect to it. I just couldn't, I didn't get, oh boy, this is pretty good, I'm going to join the military. So anyway, that worked out a lot differently than they thought it was going to happen.
Yeah, you got inoculated against the propaganda. Well, should we move on to our next thing? Because it's always fun to bring up this next topic. And let's put up the next picture.
Oh, he's your friend.
Yeah, here's the outrage of the day. If we can put that up real quick. The next one, sorry. We didn't put that up. But Fauci, he's back in the news, Dr. Paul. He said it's still not okay to eat or drink indoors, even if you've been vaccinated. I'm starting to wonder whether he's going to get banned from social media for discouraging people to get vaccinated. So what's the point if you can't do anything when you're vaccinated? And let's look at the one after this. I clipped this and put it up there because this is a classic Fauci word salad with no dressing. He said, "No, it's still not okay for the simple reason that the level of infection, the dynamics of infection in the community are still really disturbingly high. Just yesterday, there were close to 80,000 new infections, and we've been hanging around 60, 70, 75. So that's why you can't do it." And then put on that next clip because this is, meanwhile, back in Planet Reality, here's the daily deaths in the United States. 276 people yesterday in a country of 300 and some million people. 276 people died from it, but you still cannot eat inside, even if you've got that vaccine.
You know, and he was on the MSNBC show yesterday on the interview spouting this same thing. And I guess he doesn't wear his mask right either.
No, yeah.
It's pretty amazing that he continues. That takes a lot of gall. You know, where are they? Where are the people who still bow to him?
Yeah.
Because he is the expert, and I guess it's going to be. It'll last a long time. But it's becoming more known than ever. A lot of it is all fake. The hypocrisy is an issue that we push a lot, and he's been, pretty good at providing us some stories about hypocrisies. And the American people wake up to that. Say, well, maybe true, but what about the people who are telling us what to do? They don't do it themselves, and they have a right to be upset with that. But they also have a right to interpret it differently. Maybe it's not so dangerous.
Yeah.
You know, if they've studied this and then come up with the wrong answer, they're pure politically. They're not assuming it's dangerous for them, so they go about there and in large crowds and do the things that they say. If you do it, you might die.
Yeah.
Not at all. So a lot of deception goes on.
And this, sort of brings back the idea of, quote, the science. Remember, that a lot of the social media companies, if you challenge, quote, the science, you're going to get taken down, you're going to get taken out. Well, when you look at CDC, like we started the show with, it's completely changed. So if we had said what the CDC said on April 5th, 2 months earlier, we'd get taken down for misinformation, medical malpractice, or what have you. And now they're saying the opposite. Same with Fauci. He's constantly flip-flopping. So the idea is that the science, does change. Things do change. That's the nature
But
of science.
instead of the experts and the leaders sort of guiding people, the people are waking up. But that's not too strange. A lot of times that happens because government invites corruption and authoritarianism. And so often the governments, no matter how bad or how good they are a reflection of the people. So this is annoying that we have to wait, but the people are waking up. And now CDC, people say, oh no, CDC has told us all the good things. They've saved thousands and thousands of lives, and they go on. But the truth is they may have been motivated to begin with to perpetuate a myth, but it had to be, the people had to be convinced, and they got convinced by the propaganda. But now the people had to wake up and convince the CDC and others maybe they're not on the right track, which is obvious.
Well, with Fauci saying you can eat inside even if you've been vaccinated, let's look at this next clip. Is this any big surprise? This is from CNN. Nearly 40% of Marines have declined the COVID-19 vaccine. And I feel for these guys and gals in the Marines because they're going to start getting forced, I think. They're going to start, because it looks bad. If almost half of them don't want it, of course, there's no incentive because you still got to wear your mask. You still can't enjoy yourself. You can't enjoy life. But it's an interesting statistic.
No, and that's another time where grassroots are trying to tell the leaders of the world that there's a different approach and we don't believe everything you tell us.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to our friend Bob Wenzel had a good piece up, and you have some. This is really hitting close to home, Dr. Paul, with you.
Oh, boy, I'll tell you. No, on Target Liberty, I guess today or yesterday, Bob had it up here about the United Airlines, who's taking over. If you want to become overly confident and so that you can get back on airplanes again, if you want to move in that direction, don't read this. Don't read this. This will not reassure you. And I have a few points left over from them, and I think they're going to go bye-bye.
Yeah.
Unless they can send me cash for them or something.
That was your airline for years and years.
It was the most convenient flight to go back and forth to Washington.
Yeah.
And but this is terrible. He told a story, you know, about
the new CEO, yeah.
the CEO who made the announcement. Now, the CEO is a young guy, and he's a woke guy.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And he has this outlandish argument, and it's so bad. He doesn't think quality of flying should be a prerequisite for being a pilot.
Jeez,
no, it
that's
should be
woke.
the color of your skin
Wow.
and the sex that you have.
Yeah.
If you're multi-gender, you're more likely to get the job than your Sullenberger, you know, who did that miraculous landing. So he wants half of the people in United have to be affirmative action.
Yeah.
So it reminds me also of when I first moved here to Lake Jackson. There was a company that did pacemakers, and a very bold young company, Intermedics. And they were literally making them. They were the manufacturers here, and they did real well. So they had to do a lot of tedious soldering and work on it. And they had 99% of the people were women, because the women seemed to do a better job. So I keep thinking, you know, it can go both ways on that. So that is one thing. But the Sullenberger was in 2009, and that was a real miraculous thing. But this whole idea of having quotas. But you know, when I was in the military, my job as a flight surgeon was to check on pilots to make sure about their health and qualifications, and see if they were qualified for flying.
Yeah.
But they said, if you want to be a flight surgeon, you have to fly. Not as a pilot, even though most of us got our pilot's license in, but you had to fly with them to find out what the experience was like. So, so if you were going to squeeze by and let somebody get on that wasn't a good pilot, you're still going to have to fly with them.
Yeah.
And they also had, interesting enough, they also had the mechanics fly with them. So, but now I just wonder if this will be the case when they have questionable people learning to be pilots, whether they're going to have to fly with these individuals. But I think that whole thing is total nonsense, you know, and dangerous too.
Well, let's put up the clip if we haven't put it up already. Here's the CEO, young CEO. He's going to really turn things around. And the thing is it's an incredibly racist and sexist policy that somehow the color of your skin or your gender determines whether you should be a pilot or not. You know, it's they act like they're so woke and so egalitarian. In fact, it's the opposite. That certainly isn't to say that there are not very well qualified female pilots and very well qualified minority pilots. But by adopting a policy like this, you're going to plant the seed in people's mind. If they see a woman or minority pilot, hey, this guy just got on because of the skin color, I'm going to be a little bit hesitant to take this flight.
Yeah, it backfires on them. They get more discrimination. You know, this idea that you can pick a pilot, and if he only had to pass a test, and it would be fly plane. He makes this point in the article: fly this plane from A to B and land it.
Yeah.
Well, you know, most of the time, thousands of times, most of the time, you know, there are no accidents and people can do that. But you really want the person with a little extra experience and common sense, and that's why a pilot like Sullenberger was so fantastic, that he knew a little bit more about flying, and he had qualities, and he was able to do something and save a lot of lives. And I thought the analogy here that I wanted to use is in OB. Patients would come and they would, I was delivering their baby, and sometimes they said, you know, I deliver real fast, are you going to be there? I said, you know, doctors, I'll give you a secret, doctors don't really deliver babies. Most of the time, everything goes very well, and the mother delivers the baby. But the doctor is there in case there's an emergency, and so you want somebody that if you're having a woman bleeding to death after a delivery, then you would have somebody that would take care of. And I think that's a little bit about what's in OB in the pilot. You know, get somebody that looks like he's had more experience. What if the competition was between somebody that's affirmative action versus somebody that had a lot of flying hours in the military and a lot of experience in private flying and his experience excelled? That should make a difference. So there's a judgment call. But I'll tell you what, this guy's making a judgment call, but he's lacking judgment as far as I'm concerned. But it's all this compulsion to belong to the club. He wants to be in the woke generation that he doesn't want to be nasty old folks like us that don't care about people, and you don't want to help anybody out. And we need to do this affirmative action. That is nonsense, and it just violates everything libertarian. You're supposed to have voluntarism, voluntary choices, rather than a bureaucrat, setting up these rules and forcing them into. And the pressure's coming not just from this person, but it's coming from this whole wokeism that we're dealing with now, and it's infiltrated. And the worst part about it is so many of the business people are joining that. That's what is so disgusting. I think they forgot to read Atlas Shrugged.
Yeah. Well, there is thankfully a choice. And United Airlines, when you lose Ron Paul, not a smart thing to do. I got a couple things to close out on, and the first one is a chart, and I do this a lot, but I noticed this over the weekend. A month ago, Oklahoma's governor said he was removing all COVID restrictions. The president of the State Medical Association said it was too soon, and it was like, quote, spiking the ball on the 5-yard line. Meanwhile, hospitalizations are down 34%, and Ian in South Carolina says, how many more times do they need to be wrong? And you can see when they opened it up. And the last one, I want to tell a little story, Dr. Paul. And after church on Sunday, we ventured into Houston, which we never do because we're afraid of Lena Hidalgo running around with a mask trying to throw it on us. But we went in there to a place that we've gone in the past, and we don't wear masks. So we were thinking, I said, hey kids, if we get turned away, you're going to be hungry because it's a long way home from Houston. But we got to the Peep, which is a local chain, a local Houston chain, mini chain, mostly breakfast and lunch. A good place, solid place. We got there, and the picture's not great. I took the picture when I was there. But this is what I saw on their door instead of, hey, wear a mask or get out. This is the Peep. It says, beginning Wednesday, March 10th, businesses in Texas can be open 100%, and the mask mandate will be lifted. As our guest, we encourage you to wear a mask. However, it is your personal choice whether to wear one. And I thought, that is great. We walked in there. It was packed. And I thought about what this whole year, when they were forced to only have a few customers, losing so much money. What has changed all of a sudden now that they can be packed? Well, nothing has changed. But it was still a big relief. It was a good news story. Sadly, I have to say that about 90% of the people still dutifully put on their mask to walk to the table and then took it off, which is pretty silly. However, they got it. Le Peep got it. It's your own choice, your personal choice if you want to wear it or not. If they want to wear it even while they're eating, that's fine. But the rest of us who don't. So I just encourage our listeners and our friends and our viewers around Houston, give them some of your business because they deserve it.
What's sad is that we have to say it.
Yeah.
It used to be, well, I have a right to do this. You don't have to tell me to do this. And also reading books. It used to be your right. You read the books you want. But now we have to find out on which list they are. Are they going to get? You better hurry up and get that book because they're burning those. I'm gonna finish with a real short announcement in a way. We've been wanting to talk about it. We have talked a little bit, and we will be back, I think, soon, talking about the foreign policy, overall foreign policy, and we're not too enthused about what the current current administration is doing, because they're following the old rules of the old Cold War, and we have to be prepared for two fronts. So this is why we're antagonizing China and Russia at the same time. And then you say, oh, you guys are just soft on China and Russia. You don't care about national defense. Well, it's precisely the opposite. That's why I do care. I want a foreign policy that will produce the most peace and prosperity. So we'll be talking about that a little bit more. But I want to make sure our viewers realize how much we appreciate them tuning in. Things are going well. We're getting attention like much better than it used to be. And there's a lot of people who are very interested in this subject, and especially when some of the views we expressed a year ago were a lot more controversial. And we survived that controversy, and we're going to keep moving in that direction. So we're going to do our best to know what's going on, and if we have to modify our position because of science, we will. But we also have the right and the obligation to look at science as if it's really a science, and that's unfortunately not what they do when they get the head of the CDC and some other places, because they're not following science. They're following their efforts and their motivations to gain power, and unfortunately that is not good for the liberty of all individuals. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.